episode of What's in the Deck Box. I'm Aaron Hernandez, and with me again is Daniel Jackson. Daniel, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So you were just at SCG Regionals, right?
Yeah.
And we are deck teching your Abzan deck that you played. Why are you playing Abzan right now?
Well, I like the rock. Green-black is always a strong mid-range deck. I think that the format has consolidated enough that you can pick a deck that has hate. And I like the options that white brings to the sideboard for Abzan, as well as a few of the main deck cards that I thought would be important.
So primarily we're hating graveyard decks right now, right?
Graveyard decks and a few of the more linear decks.
Okay, cool. So let's get into the details. So Daniel, Abzan is normally a deck that is good because it answers lots of different threats. So let's talk about your answers.
Right, so first you have your hand disruption package, typical in a lot of green-black decks. Thoughtseize, Inquisition, you want to be able to pick apart your opponent's hand. You want one of those early, but they make terrible late game draws, so you don't want to have too many of them in the deck.
That's why we have 5.
We have 5. And then you've got your answers to creatures, Fatal Push. This has been an all-star since it was printed.
Yep.
It's really good in the format right now. There aren't a lot of 5-6 mana threats that you're trying to answer.
Inherently very good against linear aggro decks, and there's a lot of linear aggro decks in the format.
So our first draw to white here is Path to Exile. I wanted something that could cleanly remove Wormcoil Engine and the recursive threats like Phoenix, Prized Amalgam, any of those things that come back a lot. You just want to be able to get rid of them. Slightly worse against other green-black decks. You don't want to be ramping your opponent. But
well, and I imagine it has some drawbacks in some of the other linear aggro matchups, ramping them just that little bit.
So humans doesn't tend to play too many basic lands to find, neither does spirits, but it can punish you in that sense. Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy are just good all-around answers to planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, creatures, pretty much anything that gets in the way.
Anything from Ensnaring Bridge to
Blood Moon.
More lilies. Blood Moon, great example.
Very good against Chalice of the Void, Abrupt Decay, can't be countered. So then you move down to the second line. These are more cards that are threats or answers depending on where you're at in the game, and they work well together. So another draw to white was Lingering Souls.
One of my favorite modern cards.
It's absolutely at its strongest point right now, I think. Or at least it's the strongest point it's been in a while. It creates a large amount of blockers. It can finish a game out quickly. It works well with Collective Brutality and Liliana of the Veil.
Giving you something to discard for
So
value.
you're playing less lands than Jund would. So you need something to replace that discard value for Lingering Souls, gives you value still off of that. So Collective Brutality then functions more as a utility card that has some play with Lingering Souls.
Well, and both of these cards seem very good against Phoenix right now. Either half of Lingering Souls will block it pretty well. You can chump a ton, and the -2 will
you can kill it. Sometimes you just need to get that last little bit of reach, and draining your opponent finishes the game off.
Yep.
Right now I'm playing a 2-2 split of Lily of the Veil and Lily Last Hope. I think that Lily of the Veil is at its all-time worst right now.
Real bad against
Yeah,
Phoenix.
there's a lot of decks out there that, you plus a Liliana and they discard Prized Amalgam or Arc-like Phoenix. And
yeah, it really seems that either the plus is bad or the minus is bad in a lot of matchups right now.
But it's still a very strong card, and it's part of this shell. I mean,
and it does beat up, and
shell.
it does, once again, you discard your Lingering Souls to it, it beats up on other kind of mid-range creature decks. It does have its good
It's
matchups.
good against Tron, it's good against control decks if they start popping back up again. It's good against combo decks because you can pick apart their hand and then make them discard more cards. Lily Last Hope provides a way to kind of grind your opponents out. She's a very strong planeswalker and has a lot of utility. For your creature package, we have Tireless Tracker and Dark Confidant. We've gone down to 2 Dark Confidants. Confidant has become a little bit more of a hindrance than a positive, but with the Tireless Tracker and the Dark Confidant, you get some card draw in there.
All right, so these are just kind of threats that also help with the card advantage game.
Yeah, it's for grinding.
So it's just the life loss on Dark Confidant a little much too now? Is it a little bit of
so we're playing a lower curve, but it's not as powerful of a card in the sense that you're not necessarily drawing the things that you need off of it. And it's a 2/1 that you end up chump blocking with a lot.
Yeah.
Anafenza and Kalitas are both for the metagame. There's a lot of graveyard-centric decks. But they're also just good, strong cards.
Their power level is very high. They stand by themselves very well.
And then there's some combinations with these cards that they help with other matchups. So Burn, for example, I often play Anafenza and attack with a Shambling Vent, and if you can get through one time with a Shambling Vent with Anafenza plussing on it, you can start to just run away with a game.
Well,
Same thing with Kalitas.
The 4 toughness on both of those also very relevant.
Very relevant. Scavenging Ooze, again, life gain for burn decks to help keep you alive, and very strong against graveyard-centric decks.
Yep.
And then, of course, your Rock All-Star, Tarmogoyf.
2 mana 4/5, always
2
good.
2 mana 4/5, always good. This deck makes it a 4/5 very quickly. You're pitching Lingering Souls, you're pitching, you can use, again, Collective Brutality to pitch something to grow your Tarmogoyf if you need to. We're playing 24 lands instead of the normal 25 that Jund or the Rock was playing. I did have a Ghost Quarter in here at one point over Field of Ruin, but it ended up getting cut for the Concealed Courtyard. Probably could go back and forth on that. 10 fetches.
Maybe if there's a lot of Tron in your meta, you'll play the Field of Ruin.
10 fetches, 5 basics. I don't think you want any less than 5 basics. Field of Ruin, Assassin's Trophy, Path to Exile, Ghost Quarter. These all let you go get basics. You want to make sure that you have basics to get. It also lets you play around Blood Moon, which is seeing a rise in popularity again. Once you get a green and once you get a forest and a swamp back on the board, Abrupt Decay is always live.
It definitely seems like they've added a lot of reasons to have basic lands recently.
I think so.
Between Field of Ruin and Assassin's Trophy, really being very pervasive, seeing a lot of different
The only thing that you could add to this deck that might be helpful would be probably more creature lands. I like Shambling Vents.
Have you been impressed by it?
It's been good against Burn. Burn has also seen an uptick a lot lately.
Skewer the critics.
So having a life-linking 2/3, like I said, you use it with Anafenza, sometimes you gain a little bit more life. It can be the difference between the game. You could play Treetop Village in this deck. I would probably replace the Concealed Courtyard, would be the first card that I cut for a Treetop Village, even though you're taking out a black-white source for a green source. The Concealed Courtyard isn't necessary. It was just there because I needed a filler, really.
Well, and being untapped is nice.
Yeah, having to not shock yourself and having an untapped land. As far as the sideboard goes, again, there's a lot of graveyard hate in Spell Bombs and Graph Digger's Cages. Graph Digger's Cage is kind of a nombo with Lingering Souls, but if you're casting half of your Lingering Souls and stopping your opponent from playing out their game plan, you're probably still ahead.
I mean, are you bringing out your Lingering Souls for them?
You don't typically bring out your Lingering Souls in the matchups where you want Graph Digger's Cage. Dredge, Phoenix, you want those blockers. They keep you alive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you discard a Lingering Souls to a Collective Brutality or a Lily, which hopefully you board out the Lilies in those matchups anyways.
Yeah,
but,
that makes sense.
So you're typically boarding these out in those matchups because they're not as good. Your hand disruption comes out. They have cards they want to put in the graveyard. You don't want to help them put them there.
Absolutely.
So Lingering Soul stays in.
Well, and Graph Digger's Cage is so good against those decks that the little bit of percentage you lose when you discard your Lingering Souls is worth it to have a card as powerful as Graph Digger's Cage.
Down here we have more hate cards for kind of the rest of the meta. Stony Silence for your artifact-based decks. Hardened Scales, Affinity. Grixis Whir.
Or I've seen Mono Blue running around.
Yeah, there's a lot of Whir decks. There's a lot of Tron decks. Rest in peace. Or Stony Silence is still good against those.
Speaking of Tron.
Yeah. Damping Sphere is there for Storm. Tron, you could bring it against the Phoenix decks. It could slow you down, but if it slows them down, if they can't reach that critical mass of spells.
It can be hard to get that third spell off if you are paying,
4 mana for it.
Yeah.
Sorcerer's Spyglass, a lot of people have been down on me for playing. I think it's absolutely wonderful. You're playing against Tron decks. You can turn off Karn, Ugin, Walking Ballista. I bring it in against blue-white control decks. There's a lot of decks where you could just bring it in and name fetch land and turn off 4 lands in your opponent's
No,
deck.
you already are playing 5 hand destruction spells. Why Sorcerer's Spyglass over
Pithing Needle?
Pithing Needle, thank you.
I think it's just I had access to Sorcerer's Spyglass,
Okay.
so I put it in there. Down here you've got Maelstrom Pulse and Engineered Explosives. Again, just general answers, catch-all answers. You bring in Maelstrom Pulse against creature-heavy decks that are playing a lot of 4-ofs. Engineered Explosives is getting great against token decks, though it will blow up your own clues if you put it on 0. I did do that in Regionals and Oopsie.
That's a bummer.
But it's alright. I killed 15 Goblin tokens with it.
That seems worth it.
My 4 clues, so it was fine. And then I like Night of Autumn is another kind of utility card that you can bring in for a lot of matchups.
Yeah, I've been very impressed with it coming out of the sideboard. It's just never dead.
Yeah, so it's good against Burn. Gives you 4 life right off the bat.
And a blocker.
It's good against artifacts and enchantments. If you're having trouble fetching, you get a green and a white source. Now you have Night of Autumn over the green and the black source for Abrupt Decay. It just all around is a good card. Sometimes it's just a 4/3 beater, and that's its job.
Yeah, I mean if it's what you need, if you're not worried about your life total or the artifacts, just you got to get you put a clock on the board and you beat them down.
So the thing I think that I like most about this deck is that the shell itself is simple, but there are a lot of deeper play lines that show up. I've plussed a Lily Hope on my own Dark Confidant to kill it before.
I like that.
Just to stop me from dying.
Yep.
I have minus the Lily with no creatures in the yard, hoping to hit a creature, finding a creature because there's enough of them in the deck.
Which was a pretty common mode back in Standard.
Yeah.
And in this deck, you even have Lingering Souls, so you can get extra value if you hit that instead of creatures.
Yeah, I mean sometimes you plus your own Liliana of the Veil, discard a creature, minus your last hope, get your creature back. They've gotten rid of the last card in there.
I like that.
So there's a lot of deeper lines that start to show up. And then Tarmogoyf combat still fools people to this day, which I don't understand. But they'll bolt your 2/3 Tarmogoyf with no instance in the yard, and you'll accept that because now it's a 3/4 Tarmogoyf.
Good for you. Take 3 damage.
Yep.
Seems good.
And then that's the other reason I like Last Hope is Tarmogoyf and Last Hope work really well against other Tarmogoyfs.
Makes sense.
So
makes sense. Allows Tarmogoyf to attack through Grimag Anglers a lot of the time too.
Grimag Anglers, other Tarmogoyfs, Tassigers. A whole list of things that you can attack and then play the Lily and
that -2/-1 is like sneaky good.
It is.
Seems like a little thing, but it kills a lot of things and it makes combat a nightmare.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's my Abzan deck from Regionals.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And that's Daniel's Abzan deck. Daniel, thanks so much for sharing this with me.
Again, thanks so much for having me.
Seems like a great way to be attacking the metagame right now if you're worried about Phoenix and Dredge. And gives you a lot of exciting options. Thanks so much. This has been another episode of What's in the Deck Box.